the term corrective justice was mentioned before, or glass ceiling. The term glass ceiling was mentioned before. There's 5 extra minutes, Gwen, if you need them. So our next speaker, our last speaker on this panel is Gwen Yang. Gwen is the Africa's country director, Senegal, a position for which a position she holds since 2011. Oops. Africare is, as you know, is a leading non-governmental organization committed to addressing African development and policy issues by working in partnership with African people to build sustainable, healthy, and productive communities. Ms. Yang brings to her current position more than 18 years of experience in the field. Just as an example, she served as a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where she was a policy advisor officer for global development. In this role, she supervised advocacy and partnership around agricultural development, financing, and programming. A graduate of Smith College, Harvard University, and UC Davis School of Law at the University of California. Ms. Yang is a member of the Council of Foreign Relations, the Executive Board of the American Society of International Law, and several legal bars in California and in Europe. Please.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank the university and the Manna Center for welcoming me here. Can you hear me? All right, there we go. So I haven't really decided whether I'm going to use my PowerPoint yet, which is fine because I don't think it's loaded. My talk is going to be a bit different. I'm going to try to kind of tie everything together. I'm going to do a little plug for Africare and where I work, because I probably should do that. Otherwise, I won't have that hat on. But I'm going to take that hat off, and I guess in this realm of ethics and IP rights, I do want to talk a bit about the actors, because I think each of the speakers talked about some steps that need to be taken, and I want to figure out who takes those steps. And myself with the hat on as an NGO, sort of what role do we play in those steps? So first, Africare, these beautiful PowerPoints on this, but we work in 36 countries in Africare. And I work in Senegal, currently, where we've got a budget of about $15 million. Africare works in, it's easier to show in here, I don't know how to load that. So we work in both agriculture and health, and our core expertise is basically community engagement. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I mean, just as long as I'm going to talk about really boring figures, might as well have a map and some colors. But so we work in health and agriculture, and what we call, there we go. So this is where, okay, so this is where we work. And since 1970, Africa was actually formed by a partnership between an African American, and the government of Niger during the Biafra crisis. So basically, at the heart of our work is food security. As we said, we work in basically agriculture and health, and our expertise is community engagement, capacity building, locally driven behavior change, and what we call, okay, we're not on that side. There we go. I should use this. There we go. Innovative public-private partnerships, which is a bit where I want to speak from. I'm currently based in Senegal, and just to give a little piece on Senegal, we've got a population of 13.73 million, where 90% of the population involved in agriculture is smallholder farmers. So I guess like most of Africa, the driving force of both the economy and the food security in Senegal and West Africa is smallholder farming. We've got a GDP growth of about 3.5%, but yet still 46.7% lives in poverty. And again, to keep the gender balance, Senegal is a bit different, but still 60% of the agricultural work is done by women. The financial gains of that, however, in most countries are not controlled by women, fortunately or unfortunately. How do we do this? Okay. Well, anyway, that'll end the PowerPoint section of that. When I talk about the actors, oh, thank you. Okay, when I talk about the actors, this is a conference around public-private partnerships. In Senegal, in 2008, the private sector accounted for about 14% of all ag R&D investments. So not a very large percent, but about 14%. The problem you have is the second actor involved in this is the public sector. It's the government. In the government, there's a dispersed ministries, that was supposed to be the word, controlling food product standardization and certification. And at the same time, Senegal imports 70% of its food, 70% of its cereal, and most of its dairy and food. So I was going to do a long talk about R&D and IP rights, but I think that's been covered by the other people. So the question that we want to ask are, what is the role of the smallholder farmer? And I just want to talk about this just quickly because we've talked about it several times. They are the buyers and the suppliers. So they're on both sides of the chain, right? They're buying inputs, and yet they're selling. In Senegal, we did a very successful seed multiplication program, which ironically would run up against certain patents, as well as how multiplying and selling seeds or transforming seeds using locally driven technologies or locally driven ideas. But we did do a successful seed multiplication program, which I can talk about later. So the farmers are both the buyers and the suppliers. The second is the IP impact on the smallholder farmers, which I think we've covered, that being held back by not having access, also by not being able to use the most modern and up-to-date, not just in seeds, but in technologies, and adapt those to what's already locally going on or what has been going on for 500 years that works in that sentence or in that situation. Sorry, my notes are all over the place because I changed my talk based on that. So the first question I wanted to just pose to the group was, who is responsible for patent and licensing right for the smallholder farmers? Who's the voice and who's going to renegotiate those for them? There's a couple entities out there in East Africa, mainly at the moment. There's a group called AATF, which is out there talking about IP rights and being able to negotiate between the Syngenta's corporations or the Monsantos and the smallholder farmers. But who is out there? What is the role of NGOs? Right? We are actually an interim broker in the whole public-private partnership development. We can be the voice of the farmers. I can say as an NGO director to the private sector, I can negotiate your relationships in certain countries. I can allow you to work with ministries, provide you with an enabling environment. But what is the role of the NGOs? Which comes back to a bit on Ian's point of the civil society group, and how long should the NGOs be there? Interestingly, in the first panel, lots of talk about this relationship, heavily subsidized by USAID, for example, as a donor, or the UN. NGOs are often involved. How long should they be there, and what exactly should be their role? And what is the role of national and regional policymakers, and especially around IP rights, the regional economic communities, the regional trade bodies, UMOA in West Africa? What are the role that they're playing in these licensing and marketing agreements as you're talking about trading products, and you're talking about certifying seeds? And it's a new role that's coming up. As you said, West Africa is just in, what, 10 days, 7 days, getting involved in some of the patent. So I think the question we have to ask is also, what's the value and economic growth benefit proposition of all of this? And I like the way that we've turned the IP into an enabler, because really the idea is that this panel and the IP and ethical issues should be enabled for economic growth through how we're building these partnerships and how we're building the actors. So I apologize for speaking quickly. I apologize for also probably not introducing to you some of the issues, because I think people have covered those. I just wanted to show you a few of these smallholder farmers in Africa, what they're doing, what they're growing, and how they're working on, because these are the people. This is water. It's Israel. We actually worked in partnership with the Israeli Development Agency years ago in Senegal with USAID funding, I'd like to note, to introduce water technologies, and very, very successful. But these are the people we're talking about, and they need the access to all kinds of inputs. But we have to figure out what are the right relationships and what we should be negotiating in terms of licensing and patents and allowing the private sector to be profitable. I will close on that. I've posed more questions, but I hope that will stimulate the audience to talk about what Ian called a relatively dry subject, though as a lawyer it's very exciting. I very much enjoyed Julian's talk because I wanted to hang on every legal word in there. But thank you for your interest.
Thank you very much.